Get moving. At this time, I'll call to order the April 14th, 2026 York County Council Workshop to order. Our first item is the fiscal 27 budget development follow-up.
Yes, County Council, good to be back together with y'all. I hope you're doing well. Today, we're going to spend this hour going through the latest on the budget. I wanted to remind y'all that come Monday night, I'm going to be presenting my recommended budget. So we've done this, I think starting last year, Trish, we did this because y'all shared you wanted to get the budget before you had first reading. And so Monday night is not first reading, it is me symbolically handing my recommended budget off to y'all. And then your first reading will be at the next council meeting. And so we do have another budget workshop next month. And then there's the potential for one in June as well. However, the workshop in June is after conceivably what third reading could be, right? So third reading of the budget is the first meeting in June. There's a workshop in June, but we might be able to cancel it if y'all obviously pass the budget at that first meeting in June. So that's what we're lining up for. And so I wanted to give you some highlights of the budget, and we wanted to talk through more details than we've been able to share with you in the past couple of meetings. And so in your packet, you have some of this information that will be up on the screen, and we can talk through that as we go. I always want to root to what County Council shared as y'all's priorities at our budget retreat. And so here are the 10 things that y'all have spoken to throughout this process. We're going to address almost all these things in our presentation, so we want to connect y'all's priorities to what we're seeing currently in the recommended budget. Then in connection to that, this is what I, as the manager, see as our big rocks of the budget. So when we put together a budget, there are big philosophical things that we need to make sure that we're taking care of. And these are the things that I see as the highest priority, and I know y'all share this with me, and the strategic plan emphasizes these things. But the first thing that I always focus in on is our employees. Our employees are our most important resource. We need to take care of our employees because they provide the responsive and exceptional service to our residents. Our HR director, Lisa Davidson, came at a previous workshop and shared with you that we're currently focused on a 3.5% merit raise. So this is based on reviews. This is in line with previous years. In previous years, and we'll talk more about the details about the recommended FTEs, this is a lower number than we've had in terms of FTEs and the new FTEs in the budget related to previous years. But all these positions are very important, and I look forward to sharing those with you. The list of those positions is in your folder, but we have also included the positions throughout this presentation. I think that the best way to make sure that we as an organization are providing the services that are necessary is to take care of our current employees. And I commit that this budget does that. In terms of protecting York County, we've had a number of conversations about this mid-year, but in FY27, the 10% sheriff raises that y'all approved recently mid-year will have the first full fiscal year impact. We'll talk about that as we go. We've reworked the Motorola contract. It was going to go up exponentially. One thing we did to lower that cost was to take on some of the work ourselves. However, that has led to increased costs for us. I think, and I have the number in the presentation, almost worth $1 million of increased cost. We have significant projects related to public safety in our budget as well, in the Capitol with Moss and the 911 tower that we think we need to build next year. And then, as we talked about in previous retreats, my focus really is on planning for the future. There are things that if I were here 10 years ago, I would have pushed in terms of studies. It's not too late to do those. I think we need to do some of those now, and those are in our budget. But the biggest one is the required update of the comp plan, and that's a significant cost. We'll talk about that. In terms of the utility fund, one of the things we're going to share later is the need to raise rates. This is something that has not been done Since 2017, beyond the pass-through rate increase that we get from Rock Hill. We'll talk about that later, but the time is now to make sure we're funding our utility infrastructure, and to do that, you actually have to raise the rates. We'll talk about that as we go. Building for the future, we've spent a significant time as staff as we've developed this budget in updating the CIPs for both our general capital, so things like Moss Justice Center, but also our utility capital. And we're excited to share more about where we're at with that. And this budget has an additional $2 million for county roads. So last year we budgeted $2 million. This year in the budget is $4 million. So yes, we had a value of the mill increase, but when you look at all the things that we had to work into this budget, it ate up that increase. But I'm thankful that we were able to utilize that, and we'll talk more about what that looks like as we go through this. First, we're gonna start with planning for the future. Tom has shared a little bit with you in the past, so he's gonna give a high-level kind of overview of what we've talked about and where we're at today.
Thank you, Mr. County Manager, and good evening, council members. Some of this, in terms of strategic investments, you saw at the budget retreat, the stormwater initiatives that we're looking at, where we think it's very important to inventory and assess our stormwater infrastructure that we care and maintain. And then we also have some MS4 compliance issues as the result of a state audit that was done by DES. But the next two things, which would be the Newport Small Area Plan and the I-77 Corridor Plan, these are themes that we heard throughout the fiscal year. So we very carefully looked at how we can scope these kinds of projects. And these two projects in particular not only have relevance to land use and transportation, but in particular economic development, and can thus become a part of our economic development strategy as we go forward. We also talked about a Parks Long Range Master Plan. And I think what we have going on with the Trails Plan right now will feed into this plan, but we realized that we needed to extend beyond what we did with the Clemson study. And I'm satisfied and persuaded with the funding we have that we're going to be able to do a long-range plan that will take us a lot further. The county manager already spoke of the comprehensive plan, but there are two other items that we didn't discuss. Well, perhaps one of them we did, but I didn't discuss them or present them. There's a space needs assessment, which is estimated to be at $1.2 million. But this is going to be a reflection of our growth in the future, looking at what we have now, what we need in the future. Mr. Reckitt can speak more to that if he pleases. But we're also introducing an Exit 90 feasibility study. When I first came here, very shortly after I first came here, there was an event out at Carowinds where Governor McMaster had spoke of the state or DOT trying, or he was trying to put in his budget funding so we could do a feasibility study for Exit 90, because obviously there are issues at the interchange that need to be resolved. It's our gateway to the community, and we need better circulation with the on and off ramps at that location. But through the course of many discussions, we discovered we had funds available through an admissions tax that was collected through Carowinds. I'm sorry. Always had my wife on my mind first. But there are dollars available, and we're prepared to leverage up to $2 million. But I think we want to talk to the state DOT and see how much leverage that we want to put in with those funds, or want them to put in, and we're prepared to do that. But with this particular slide, I'll simply conclude by saying I think all of these projects have and will have a generational impact if we can execute them. I spoke about playbooks and game plans at a previous workshop. And these are definitely the blueprints we need for the future that'll help us manage growth and do it in a very smart way. Before we talk about capacity building, Mr. Reckett, did you have anything you wanted to offer on the space needs assessment?
Not really. I'd just say that basically through the capital planning process this year, we had a number of capital requests that were related to building growth and, additional space needed for many departments. So we thought it was best to, grow responsibly by really looking at the space needs study, which we actually identified in the strategic plan as well. I will say that that budgeted number is an all-in budget number, including parks, libraries, museums. And when I say that, I mean operational space, not to be confused with the Parks Master Plan and park planning, but actual operational space for the employees.
Thank you. And if I could ask Karen or whoever has the remote. Yeah. I think that this particular
I'm
slide-
sorry, can I ask a question about that 1.2 million? So the space needs assessment, all of these strategic investment fundings are one-time funding. And I think, the last one is something that comes from a very specific admissions tax fund. I would like to know, obviously not now, but where do we intend to draw these funds?
Yes.
Are we going to be pulling them from ED if they're associated with an ED? Where is this? The space needs one is pretty large, so I guess I would like a little bit more detail about is that something we're doing in-house? Are we having to hire someone outside to come in here and tell us what our needs are going to be?
So real quick to your first question, I'll let Eric answer the second one. Yes, great question, Madam Chair. So Newport in I-77 South, we currently have being funded by the ED fund in my recommended budget. So these are not all general fund projects. That's not the intent of the slide. This slide is intended to show all the plans that are in the overall budget, right? The stormwater and the space needs assessment, we're currently recommending using fund balance appropriation to fund, okay? Because those are big one-time costs. But the comp plan, we currently have in our general fund operating budget. So,
And I'll add I believe if you go back to the slide, I think the stormwater compliance is up there.
Yeah.
That's in the general fund budget.
yeah, that's in the general fund as well. Yep. But we can give you the exact location of all these, but what we've tried to do is put them where they need to be. A big cost like 1.2 million, I agree with you, that's hard to put into an operating budget, so that's why we have it coming out of fund balance. But Eric, do you want to mention, you want to answer the second part of that question?
That is a consultant study, not to be done in-house. There's going to be a pretty big effort in-house amongst all the departments, but the intent was to hire a consultant to do that study. Similar to the one in 2017, would be the last time the county did one of these.
Is the exit 90 feasibility study, I know, again, getting that right is critical, right? And with the advent of Six Flags being a major partner in the solution, as we look at this feasibility study, I know that there's always been a major need to design it to be able to look at some type of off-ramp to right into Carowinds. So I would assume that's all part of the conversation with that study, but again, I think that's critical, we get it right.
I think so, and I agree with you, sir. So I spoke with the DOT secretary, and he thought that they would be wanting to conduct this study during next fiscal year. So DOT is working very quickly on this. This is a high priority for them. And so he wanted to make sure, because this was in our agreement with DOT and the SIB, that we were able to budget for this in the upcoming fiscal year. So the feasibility study is going to look at the interchanges, and obviously that could be a part of the interchange. That also might be a part of the fast lanes coming in as well, so it might not actually be a part of the interchange, it could be a part of the fast lane. Because most of the traffic that they're trying to divert directly into Six Flags is going to be coming from North Carolina. And so I know that's something that NCDOT and SCDOT are talking about, but it's too early in the planning stages.
Right.
But I think this feasibility study will support all
Yeah, I
that.
just didn't want to lose sight of that overall need to
Yep.
make sure we get that right. So,
Definitely.
yeah. Thank you.
As it relates to space needs, will the space needs assessment take into consideration the Economic Development Office above the library, and maybe the library taking over that space and ED looking at a different space?
So I've actually got something about that later in my presentation. There is the need for libraries to increase space. The libraries are doing their own kind of study to determine how many additional libraries they need to build. The study that we're recommending would make sure that our employees all have the space they need, right? And so, yes, I don't know if we're going to be able to solve for ED before the libraries really need that space, though. So, yes, we need to figure out where ED should be long-term. I don't currently have a solution for that. I don't think it's in the Baxter Library, though.
Right.
Long-term. And so I think this study will look at that, but I think ED might have to move before the study's done, quite honestly. But we'll talk about that.
Are we going to talk about that more tonight? Because I have a suggestion I'd like to make.
Yeah, we'll see how much time we got tonight. But yeah, I've got something in there to say that it's more of an open-ended question to y'all that we need to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
All right, and Mr. Edwards, if you'd advance one more slide, because this one's
Yep.
just rhetorical. But in terms of building capacity, we did discuss at the budget retreat the need for a long-range planning position, which is a recurring cost. We also discussed an adequate public facilities ordinance, which would require a consultation to help us study how to set up an ordinance and how to implement it. So we spoke of those things before. What has been embedded in the budget process since its origin, but we didn't bring up at the retreat, was the senior building inspector. And we thought it was important to reveal that position and what it would be used for and how it can obviously benefit the building inspections division. And we are experiencing more complex projects, whether they're bigger industrial, commercial projects. But the other benefit would be this gives us a way to improve our quality control and enhance our customer service. So we weren't playing a shell game at the budget retreat, but we just thought it was important to emphasize that this position is just as critical with the long-range planning position. But at the same time, again, themes we've heard through the current fiscal year, in lieu of impact fees, adequate public facilities ordinance could be an option for us if we want to tie it to infrastructure capacity in the future.
And the long-range planner to me is integral because not only are we updating the comp plan, but there are different area plans that we hear from council that y'all want us to be able to do. We simply don't have the staff to do it. So Newport, for example, is something that, you know, we're gonna seek a consultant for, but hopefully something like the Carowinds Boulevard entertainment area someday could be a small area plan that this long-range planner does. So we're trying to staff up because we're a very lean organization so that we can do more complex projects and we don't have to use as many consultants.
And I think the long-range planner could help in making we're all, or making sure that we're all on track with what we want to implement through all the plans.
So,
Have you,
oh, go ahead.
I mean, these are all planning, I don't know if you have other planning positions that you proposed in the budget, but
Yep.
one of the ones that we talked about is an ombudsman to be able to identify the problems that are in planning from a resident perspective and from a business perspective, how to identify those things and be able to act quickly to change recode, which has been something that's been very concerning for the council for the past 2 years. Is that being addressed at all in the budget?
Yeah, so in your folder, and this will be in the budget that I hand to y'all Monday night, I've got the recommended reclass list. And so my recommendation is to create an ombudsman through a reclass. And then that person would be in the manager's office. Yes, they'll be working on planning-related items, but a lot of our
When you
customer.
say reclass, are you saying take an existing position and add more duties to it?
It's a vacant position. Yeah, so I'm trying to limit the
It's a
total.
vacant position?
It's vacant right now?
Yeah.
How long has it been vacant? Sorry.
Well, Tom, we can talk more about that. I mean, this would be the executive assistant position in the manager's office. And that position really helps with customer service for the entire organization. What I want to do with that position is create that more as the liaison for customer service and responding to council concerns and resident questions through one avenue, and that person coordinate with the entire organization. I think that would help with our response. And so as I went to try to hire that position, and went through a whole process, I had clarity about what I really needed to be successful in terms of addressing residents' concerns and questions that we get. And it is a full-time job, trying to keep up and make sure we don't drop the ball on anything, just from y'all, let alone from residents. And so having that person in the manager's office is important. I think that they'd obviously be very involved with planning as well.
So, and on the adequate public facilities ordinance study, is that amount that you've identified, is that going to cover the cost, and is that something we can do in tandem with the comp plan? So obviously, the adequate public facilities is designed to ensure that when large developers come in, that they're paying for the infrastructure needed to do the work that they're doing, at least adds additional responsibility for that.
I'm sorry. We're presently evaluating, when we look at the whole scheme of plans that we're proposing, if they are all approved in the budget, a lot of the scope has been written already, and if you were to approve these plans in the budget in late May after third reading, we're already logistically trying to position ourselves with procurement where we can get RFPs out before the end of this fiscal year and seize the opportunity to try to bring all of the consultants in, but we're also trying to logistically think about where is it appropriate and where could we actually establish some cost savings by maybe bundling some of these plans as add alternates in the comprehensive plan. So I think we're able to do that successfully. We may actually be able to save a few dollars doing it that way, but I think we deserve, or we need to talk to the procurement manager to get some additional advice and guidance on that. Make sure that we're not violating our procurement rules.
Two quick, well, let me back up to the ombudsman. Are you sure that's only a single position if you need to move it into the manager's office for more? Because everybody that I talked to, and Tom went up and spoke to a lot of people in Lake Wiley area about the ombudsman. Everybody was extremely excited about getting that. We didn't get it last year. But I feel like that would be a full-time position in planning, at least for now, until we kind of get some of the edges smoothed out. I still get a lot of calls about different things going on up there that it's not that planning has an issue, it's just things don't fit inside the box. And so I could see, I'm sure if I get that much in my district, I'm sure every district has that much, and will that one position be able to assist the manager's office at all?
It's a fair question. I wanted to try it, but quite honestly, if that's what y'all think we need to do, I'm not going to argue with you if you want to add an additional position. I was just trying to come up with ways to make sure we didn't have to add a full time equivalent and try to work with what we had. But that, again, if y'all want to talk about that further as we go through the budget process, I'm open to that.
Or maybe you can put it into a, have them maybe dedicated more of their percentage of time to planning, and then fill in on your position when needed. But
Right.
that's my only, I know it's very much needed in planning.
Right. And for me, as the manager, when things go to a department and they don't come through us on customer service, we might not have any idea that it's going on.
Right.
And so obviously we could organize it in a way that we have reports that we're getting, so we're aware of what that position's working on. But if it's in the manager's office, it's easier for me to be involved and know what my departments are working on, where I need to push, where I need to pull, and make sure that they have the support they need to get back to people. But yeah, we're more than willing to talk through that and where it sits and
Well,
I have no problem for them answering directly to you and not, but just where the majority of the time. The other one
Yep.
is the adequate public facilities. Is that not the exact same thing as an impact fee? I mean, generally, it's the same thing as an impact fee. Why are we creating something new for South Carolina, not just following the impact fee method? Which then goes back to last year when we wanted to do impact fee studies and everybody's so bent out of shape over impact fees that we couldn't get the study done. Are we just renaming it something else so that it's palatable to get into the budget this time? I mean, is
Well-
it not the exact same thing?
It's not theoretically. The impact fees are based on a more finite mathematical model. And I think with what we've experienced this year with impact fees, we were trying to offer an alternative, which has been brought up in the past since I've been here. I wouldn't call it impact fees by another name. I would instead say it is a way to link development to paying its fair share, but not necessarily proportionate share of infrastructure. Now, on the other hand, if you wanted to reset the clock or just do a total reset and do impact fees, I don't know that there would be a big difference in price in terms of consulting. But an adequate public facilities ordinance isn't necessarily a bad thing to have either.
I think
The thing I have with the adequate public facilities is that the impact fees are well-established, been in process for decades. We have you start on this and it's very subjective, and then there's going to be people say, well, you're hitting these people harder, it's not fair to me. It may or may not get us tied up in a lawsuit because not many people in South Carolina are doing it already. And as I said the very first time last year when I first got on council, we are not the most business-friendly county there is. And so this just looks like another way to scare off business from York County.
So another thing with that is the adequate public facilities ordinance can also target things specifically that necessarily impact fees can't, which is why, like Assistant Manager Couch mentioned, impact fees are tied to a study that are very specific. Public facilities ordinance, I don't disagree with your point, but it's more broad because it's more receptive to the county needs. And additionally, at the state level, they even tried to take a stab at this through concurrency, and it has fallen on its face. And so, unfortunately, it falls to the locals to have to come up with something like an adequate public facilities ordinance, because it's not going to be statewide. So, not saying that we should take our lead from the state, but it's being looked at, but it's just not gaining the traction. So, but this type of ordinance is more targeted than impact fees, which have to be tied to a study.
System, and they have to be spent on system improvements.
Yeah.
As
But I don't
opposed to-
disagree with your points about impact fees, but it's, that is a balancing act between those two.
But I think from a county level, we have more controls over that from a structural standpoint. But what we talked about before, and I think it can be more targeted in order to possibly attract businesses in certain ways, because we can redirect how we want to proportion, where we need to target specifically in order to maybe possibly attract, make it better for businesses in some ways. But the other thing now that we're having this conversation is that, we're hearing a lot of rumbling from the state, right? And there's some real concerns I'm hearing from the state when it comes to supporting and maintaining our state roads in the county. And so I guess that when we go through this budget exercise, the concern I have is that if the state's going to make a move, as they've talked about, with pulling back on funding of state roads and having kind of thrown out in the backs of the counties, then I think that's a whole nother discussion that I think we have to be open to as we look at our budget and make sure we're planning appropriately.
Yeah, we have a couple slides at the end of this talking about the where we're at with some of the legislative priorities. And we'll talk more at length, but great point and question. Currently, the DOT bill is still voluntary, so early on it was not voluntary. I don't think there's many counties that are going to be signing up for this, but there's some other details we want to share later in the meeting related to that. But yes, we're not in the position to take on more roads, especially because we feel like we're currently underfunded by the state anyways. And the incentives to take on roads that they've currently offered in the bill are not worthwhile or advantageous to take on more infrastructure.
I'll be brief. So as I prepared tonight, I too wrote down, I was hoping we'd see the long-range planning position back into the budget this year. I think it's critically important. The ombudsman, and I think it is well-positioned in the manager's office for the assistant county managers and the managers to utilize that ombudsman. So your highest and best use is with other things other than the things that we're calling you and having you work on today. I do believe in what you said too. The first hire will lead to the second hire because this becomes a cultural change in what we're trying to accomplish here in York County in delivering a better level of active, not passive service to the citizens and the businesses that look to do business here in York County. So I think it's something that we build upon. So it's not the end, it's the beginning of a new process. Adequate public facilities, I had actually written that one down as well. I'm glad to see that here. Because in a way, when we talk about growth paying for growth, just school growth is part of it. There's a whole lot more growth that goes along with growth paying for growth. It's the future expenses we have that the taxpayers have to pay. And so why not have the entities, I won't define them, that come into the county, help pay for these expenses that are in the future as a result of them being here? I realize that does get a little sensitive with, is this the kind of place you want to come and open your business or create a development or whatever? It's something we'll have to work through. But there is an expense down the road to many things, and we need to get ahead of it, in my opinion. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess, looking back at this ombudsman and some of the other documents, so are you saying you're taking like Linda's secretarial position and that's what you're transforming into an ombudsman?
Yeah. It's been vacant this whole time. I'm happy to talk about it more offline, but the work that we need to prioritize is responding to residents and engaging. And the executive assistant did a lot of that work, amongst other things, but I've been able, with staff's help, to manage without it. And I think that's a critical position, so I'm trying to find ways to fund it without creating additional positions. But, yeah.
In a way that you can get a qualified person to actually fulfill the
That's right.
responsibilities of an ombudsman.
That's right, but I'm happy to talk individually about that more at length. I mean, technology has changed a lot of things. Just like we've been planning for the future, general capital and planning items, I wanted Eric to speak how we're doing that on the utilities front.
Yeah, so basically, this is just a quick roadmap of, how we're planning for the future. Now that utilities is its own standalone department, we're looking forward. So over this past year, we've been undertaking a comprehensive system study of the entire system. There's 5 separate studies going on right now that are all gonna finish at various times this spring. We were hoping to have that done earlier so we could incorporate it more into this budget process, but it just didn't, the study went on longer than we anticipated. So coupled with that comprehensive study, we also have a financial rate study. This includes, what our rate structure is gonna look like, what our rates are in the future to fund this future for growth. Along with that, our impact capacity fees must be studied, because by ordinance, they will sunset at the end of this fiscal year, in December of 2026. So we need to have that study to come up with a recommendation for those fees as we go into the future. Once we compile all these studies, including the financial study, our plan is to get together, collaboratively and have a good capital plan to present to you all in the next budget process next year. Really looking at prioritizing what's the most important projects that are identified in those studies, and then coming up with a game plan over the next 10 years to move that forward. And our goal is to, increase project execution and get things done on time, on budget, and within your priorities. So that's generally the roadmap moving forward, and we're pretty committed to getting a good capital plan as we go forward. We'll get into more of the actual, this next year's capital plan as we move forward in this presentation.
Thanks, Eric.
Does our utilities include anything along the lines for stormwater?
So currently, stormwater is within the planning department. So we have not created a stormwater fee. We do not have an enterprise stormwater system. What we're starting to do with some of these stormwater plans is study our infrastructure to begin to determine if we were to do a fee someday in the future. And I think, Tom, at the budget retreat, you said in theory we're potentially 5 years out from that. We've got to begin to study our infrastructure to figure out what the fee would be and what it would pay for and what area of the county it would cover. So we're in the very beginning stages. If we were to ever create a stormwater utility, then potentially, yes, they could be a part of the utilities department. They might get spun out of planning. Sometimes they're in engineering departments. We would have to cross that bridge if we were to make if council were to make the decision to create a stormwater fee someday. But at this point, the operational impact of stormwater issues are fixed by Public Works, right? The planning side of it and the future focus side of it is within, and the inspection side of it is within planning. And so there's a number of things that Public Works does that are stormwater operational fixes, but they're being paid for out of the general fund. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I mean, any, right-of-way or drainage concern, a majority of these issues are within the county right-of-ways. But we're only limited to that. We cannot work on private property, which some of these utilities address some projects that would address that, depending on how they're set up. But primarily, we're just focused on any stormwater-related issues, either at county facilities and/or right-of-ways owned by the county.
I know one of the things I get a lot of calls on from people out in the rural county areas is when the water's supposedly going through that culvert under the driveways, it's grown up, so they just need to be trenched back out. I don't know if our
Yeah,
staff is
we have a
going
regular
to.
maintenance program, but we also have 630 miles of county roads that we're go through and address them, and we're also reactive when it comes to those complaints. I mean, that's generally what we receive, and we go out there and address it at that time.
Because what that does is if that ditch isn't kind of trenched out, that water goes now, starts to go in people's yards, and if it's heavy enough, it's getting up to the homes and, whatever. Do we take, so if I'm getting calls and say, hey, I live on blank road, our whole road, our yards are flooding because we don't have this trench, do we take those kind of calls to send people out to look, to trench?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Depends
But
who
that's
the
only,
road is.
that's only if it's county roads. Most
Yeah.
of the water issues are state roads, and the culvert issues are state-owned infrastructure, which is why I think the whole issue of stormwater obviously is something that we're studying, and it's important, and we have to do, and we have to identify where that infrastructure is, because it wouldn't be fair for folks who are never going to ever benefit from
Right.
a fee
Into it.
to pay into something they're never, ever gonna get there. But in the areas where they need it, they need it. And so I think we need to be we need to use a scalpel, because I'm a little bit concerned that I'm hearing, I understand, but when we talk about utility rate increases and doing a rate study, we're solely talking about water and sewer. We're not talking about anything but water and sewer. And we have historically only passed along, my understanding is that the city of Rock Hill's rate increase for water and sewer, it went up tremendously this year too, hasn't it? Didn't they say 11%?
This year's 8% for sewer only, and 0% for water.
Okay.
That's currently proposed, but not approved.
I thought it was different, because I think
It
sometimes.
started at 11 and went to
Okay,
8.
that's why I
Yes.
didn't make that up in my head.
Maybe it should be all.
So, I just think I like to hear that y'all are seeing that it takes very specific planning and not knee-jerk response, but it's obviously something that we've been talking about as part of this. We need to have this in our long-range planning now, so that we can identify and investigate the infrastructure needs.
Not to prolong our meeting.
Go ahead.
Not to prolong our meeting, but going back to what you said, so what happens, we have a state road that has a culvert that's clogged. Is the state gonna take care of that? Do they pay us to take care of that?
Yeah, the state is gonna take care of that.
Okay.
Generally, if we get those complaints, we pass it along for the resident. That's our sort of internal policy that we will pass that along to the state, but we also encourage them to do so as well, so they get it twice.
Right.
There's an online system. I do everything online, so there ways a record of it, and that seems to be the best approach.
Okay, thank you.
I think, however, we can make that easier when we get one to make it automated to apply to the actual infrastructure, the jurisdiction that has, the entity that has jurisdiction over that infrastructure needs to get notified. And a lot of times they don't. I mean, I do it. When my folks call me, I immediately email it straight to DOT, but I didn't mean to interject. What were you saying?
Let me just expand a little bit, or not expand, but reinforce the, going back to the stormwater and the comprehensive plan. We definitely need that. York County is, from a development and roadway standpoint, not that old compared to a lot of places, but there's a coming storm for these culvert pipes and whatnot. You know, they say corrugated metal has a 50, 75-year lifespan. It doesn't. It's going to start rotting out. These roads are going to start failing. We're going to have a lot of them coming up. We've got, you know, real development, as far as I know, started in the 90s. And so we're getting close to the lifespan on a bunch of roads, and it's going to overwhelm Public Works. If we don't have a way to fund these things through some type of fee, and as we see with the state, I know that we don't want to fix state roads, but we've got the pennies program that is out there fixing state roads, and we're going to do the same thing for stormwater. Stormwater, these roads are going to start failing. The ditches and the creeks are going to grow up. They're never going to flow as good, and we're going to end up with flooding. Luckily, we don't have that yet, but as more development comes to York County, they're going to start developing in areas they really shouldn't be. Now, luckily, we're far enough along, unlike some places like Charlotte that started in the 70s and 80s with development. We've got good floodway and flood plain plans, but we're going to have to deal with stormwater sooner rather than later, and it's going to be an issue, and we can either fund it in a big chunk in the future, or we can start preparing for it now. And then as for the rate studies, if we haven't increased our rates for water and sewer since 2017, other than passing through the rate increases that the county or that the city has sent us, we're doing a disservice to the county. We obviously, whatever we were at in 2017 and what we were spending money on cost that much money. Inflation has been through the roof since then. So where we were buying pipe for, let's say, $1 a foot, and we're paying $2 a foot for it, we've lost 50% of our service right there that we were providing to people. And I would go out on a limb and probably say we weren't taking advantage of our residents back in 2017, so we're even worse off now trying to keep up with them. And, it looks good that we didn't make any rate increases, but just like what happened in 2017, because I remember I emailed council about that when I first heard, we did like a 15% increase for several years. And I was like, what have y'all done? And it had been because we hadn't done an increase since like 2003. And so we need to make sure if we're doing increases that we do at least inflation, because we're losing buying power. Everything is going up. I know people hate to hear about increases on, all their utilities and everything else, but, everything that the utility buys is increasing in price. So if we're buying the same things for more money, then we're not buying something else or not doing something that really needs to be done. And then we're going to come up and hit people with a 25, 30, 40% rate increase. And it happens to every place that's ever tried to go and not raise rates. Right. And I can pull out documents from where I work from the 1980s where they did the same thing and did a 40% increase for 3 or 4 years in a row to try to catch back up. So
Yes, and we completely agree with you.
I want to make one more quick comment. We did try to implement a stormwater fee probably 6 years ago. It's been a while. And so this is not a new topic.
Right.
It's just whether we're going to bite the bullet and do it. Just like Andy was saying, we can't keep putting off certain things because we fall that much further behind. I know everybody, it looks good and sounds good when we don't raise taxes, we don't raise this fee. But in the end, somebody's going to have to bear the burden of doing it. it never sounds good, but it feels good when we're able to dispatch somebody to take care of a problem because we got the money to do it and not keep putting it off, not taking the money. And then we say, well, we really can't do it because we didn't plan for it. We don't have the money in the budget. Well, they don't give a crap about that. They want it fixed, whatever it is. They want it addressed, whatever it is. And we got to sit back and say, well, we're not taking up money for it, or we don't have that in the budget, or we're not doing that. That's not gonna go over well with citizens when we're obviously taking their property taxes and money for other services. They want the services when they need it, because if my yard is flooding because my out front hadn't been trenched, that ain't gonna help them when you say, well, we're not prepared for that.
Yeah,
Right.
It's easy on us.
Yeah.
Because we may or may not be up here in 10 years when these residents get hit. But it's the same
coming.
residents that are getting hit. They're gonna get the abuse and have to pay for it. Whether they pay for it now incrementally getting there, or they pay for it all then. It just looks better for if the present council gets to kick the can down to somebody else.
I just think I think we're throwing a lot of different things in this. The stormwater fee, which is totally separate and has totally different infrastructure than the water and sewer issue. And I think we all recognize that we have to take care of that. At the same time, one of the beauties of pennies is that people can't ever complain because you know where that money is going. You may think, hey, it costs too much for us to get there, but you know when that money is being taken, where it's going, and it takes it from folks that live outside our district, and it can only go to those projects. It can't go to other project funds, only those things. What I think is extremely important, and as stewards of the county taxpayer money, though, is to make sure that we don't just raise rates. And again, it amazes me when folks don't understand when you're talking about a rate study, that only applies to people that are on a water service. People who have wells, that doesn't apply to you, it has to do with that, but it needs to be directly tied to project enhancements. And until we have that, I think it is, that's part of the thing that this council has really tried to focus on these last 2 years especially, is planning.
And that reinforces what I was saying about impact fees before. Impact fees have a direct study. You know what you're gonna spend those fees on, just like the Pennies project. You know what you're gonna spend it on, so.
Ain't a percentage as far as we do the adequate facility on the new stuff that can be worked in the percentage of that stormwater for the new ones coming in to have to cover that, right?
And with regard to impact fees,
Stormwater.
No,
Yeah,
on just in the adequate facility, if we make them start sharing the burden of, now that ain't gonna do much for a pre-existing, but.
yeah, I think in the bigger picture with stormwater is, the focus is probably gonna be on the urban service boundary, because that's where most of the development is occurring in the unincorporated areas. And if that holds and we follow our plans and our ordinances, the stormwater impact isn't going to be that great. But I think the most important thing to understand very succinctly is that the process I spoke about at the budget retreat, we need certain kinds of intelligence before we follow through with a stormwater utility fee. We have to understand what infrastructure we have, what needs to be
Right.
replaced. We have to have a grab on what the growth is gonna do in the future. Just doing a rate study, it may not cover all the costs. And then there's a bigger issue too, is we have to have a good engineering or environmental understanding of how our basins work throughout the county, because that influences not only flood control, but stormwater flow. So all of these things tie together. And that's why it's a little bit of a longer game to get to a stormwater utility. But I think if phase 1 and subsequently phase 2 inventory assessment is funded and we can keep rolling the ball down the court, in 5 years, we can get somewhere where we can have a fair, equitable, but meaningful utility fee to help cover the costs of stormwater management.
Right.
I can't let go pass without this one thing. We are supposedly in a system where engineers who do the bigger projects, that water has to be a water neutral facility. It has to be water neutral. And so the concern that I have, which is part and parcel of this, we talked about this before, is you have to enforce the current ordinances, and if there isn't the enforcement there, we need to have those ordinances ASAP that give us because if somebody's not maintaining their pond, that is why it's causing the problems
Yeah.
downstream. And we have got to be able to enforce that and keep it there, because technically, or we need to figure out how these planes are coming in and why it's still causing the problem.
Right.
Because
And
it's
I-
already supposed to be fixed.
I
but-
agree with that, but it's also like Andy said, though, if you take like in the vast region of my part with having the hills and the gullies of York County, I mean, I've got a lot of roads that wash out.
Well, but back to retention or detention ponds, the basic concept, the basic understanding of maintenance of the detention and retention ponds should be something that we make sure that we highlight to make sure that each of the developments, again, are held accountable. Because as Christie was saying, downstream, you see downstream impact from retention and detention ponds not being maintained. And that's already in our ordinance. We just gotta, what's on the books, we gotta make sure we're upholding. Pennies for progress, though, I mean, the value, we've seen the value of that and how we can structure something like that into, what we're looking at here from a utilities perspective, I think is gonna go a long ways too.
Okay.
So,
When,
yeah.
when we do that study though, this great thing of where everybody got into the wetland credits and all, and we allowed a lot of building up and a lot of, that played its part in a lot of this problem too.
Well, we appreciate all the feedback y'all are giving. This has been a good discussion. Just like we have to plan for the future, we're also currently building for the future too. And I think it's important that we recognize there are things that we need to build that we're behind on and we need to get done and move forward. We've got property and parks that we want to build out. Granted, Catawba Bend is not something we're going to build out overnight, but when you look at this list up here, in your folder, I've got the FY '27 recommended capital projects list, and this will be in the budget, obviously, Monday night as well. But I wanted to highlight on this slide the total dollar amount. So for capital projects, and these are general capital projects, which we've talked about with y'all at retreats as being our 1420 projects, but this includes, the animal shelter, the booking center, the coroner's facility, and amongst many others. That's going to total in my recommended budget $38 million. There's a number of projects we need to get moving on and a couple big ones. Catawba Bend, we're continuing to work on the trail and trying to move that forward with a design of the entire trail. The 5-mile trail along the river is part of that. Capital maintenance has its own millage. And so one of the things that I'm recommending is that we increase that millage to account for the ever-increasing cost of capital maintenance. And you'll see that as we talk about millage rates later. Solid waste collection has projects as well as $13.6 million for water and sewer. I know, pennies is always a big number. Many of y'all have mentioned pennies tonight. It is a significant investment and it is a very important program for our county. In talking to our delegation a lot recently, all of them mentioned how great pennies has been. But you see $145 million in the budget is related to pennies. And then we're also recommending continued work on Wood End in the Bethel Lake Wiley Parks District. All that together is over $200 million. And so it's important, and one of the things that we've worked hard as a manager's office is try to improve our reporting for capital projects. We're going to continue to work on that. But I also think it's important that we add a capital projects manager. This is another reclass that I'm recommending from a vacant position. But this person will make sure that our 112 total capital projects are delivered on schedule, on budget, but also reported accurately and be able to manage the budgets to make sure that we're adequately funding these projects and everyone's accountable to that.
And I might just say, it's not really adding a position, it's more of a
Yeah,
reclass.
that's it.
We're shifting a position out of engineering to accommodate this. And engineering, they do a good job at getting the end product, but just like a private business, we have to make sure that we're getting things done on time, under budget, time and money. And we have to make sure we're effective with that across all facilities and infrastructure, which is not to replace what engineering is doing, but the whole shooting match with what you're seeing on this slide.
There's a lot of work that we're committed to doing. There's a lot of work we're doing this year. But on your list, you'll see in the FY '27 column, so we've included '26 because that's current year, but you'll see the FY '27 column that lists all the projects. All right. Go ahead.
I think that the Parks and Rec Master Plan, and that is, it's 125 in this PowerPoint. This is 175 on this. I'm hoping it's 125.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. I think that's a typo. Sorry about that. Yeah, I believe it's 125, but Trish,
It
yeah.
Yes, it's 125.
All right, so we've talked a lot about roads with y'all over the last couple of years, and we're continuing to improve our roads plan. I wanted Eric to talk a little bit, and we're going to try to speed up the rest of the presentation to get through this tonight, but I wanted Eric to speak a little bit to kind of what we're doing in-house.
Yeah, I just want to give a quick in-house update. Many of you probably haven't seen this. So we've been doing in-house paving for about 5 years. We're resurfacing in-house. Over that 5 years, it resulted in about $3 million in savings. We can do a road for an average of about $400,000 or $350,000 a mile versus contracting it out at about $600,000 or $700,000 a mile. So we really went into this next year, like looking at our capacity, what we had to do, what we could do to increase that. Really where we're at now is we wanted to prioritize our efficiency and our quality, and we had some issues with recruitment and retention of employees. No one wants to work in the asphalt business, so kind of focused on that this year with some reclassifications of the roads division to sort of provide a career ladder to allow those, experienced employees to come in. They can get incentivized for training, where they get the special certifications, just in an effort to retain them and recruit better, more experienced people. So if you look at the chart that shows the 5 years, we are expecting to increase a whole other mile on this next year, just based on our current staff and improving those efficiencies for about a $500,000 savings over 2.7 miles. So that's also in this next year, the county manager talked about in the beginning, we are increasing road funding from $2 million to $4 million. Our cost here is about $850,000. We'll contract the rest out, but this will be a big improvement. We, engineering went through the efforts of doing a pavement condition index, doing that study, and really prioritizing those roads. And I think Mr. Couch is going to speak briefly on the roads plan update regarding engineering.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Reggett. We discussed the roads plan where we had a budget retreat, where we talked about a schedule of roads over a 5-year period based primarily on the condition index ratings and the traffic counts. And there has been some additional traffic count data that has been put into that 5-year schedule, but it doesn't substantially or otherwise affect the recommended schedule by engineering of which roads to do over the next 5 years. Of course, it's always a discretionary decision, but based on the data that we currently have, we would recommend that if the funding is approved in the budget, that we go forward with the schedule that engineering recommended.
All right. So, both Eric and I have mentioned this earlier in the presentation, but we believe we're long overdue for a water and sewer rate increase. There is the need to do this. One of the things we originally hoped to do was to wait until the rate study was complete. However, at this point, having dipped our toes into the rate study and understanding, as Councilmember Litton shared, the likely result of the rate study with not raising rates since 2017, we think it's prudent to begin raising rates this next year. This will limit the rate increase in future years and also begin putting money into the infrastructure we need. We also are seeing significant operating increases that these rate increases will go to. So there's a significant increase based on the infrastructure we have. I know a lot of y'all have experienced some of the impacts of this infrastructure, but in order to fix it, we need to have money. This is an enterprise system, and so this rate increase will account for about potentially $2 million to address some of those, but I'll let Eric speak to this as well.
Yeah, so if you look, we talked briefly earlier, of the 10% sewer, that 8% of that 10% is the Rock Hill pass-through. So we're adding an additional 2% and then increasing both water volumetric rates and base fees for both water and sewer. So maintenance costs are obviously going up, and I just threw a couple of bullets in here of certain things that really drive up that cost, and we've got this proactive tank maintenance program now. We've got an active parts inventory that allows us to respond to leaks and everything faster, without having to try to source parts. So all these are driving up. And another thing we're doing is a number of smaller pump stations were identified for replacement through our capital planning. We're able to do that in-house for cost savings, but that also drives up that cost as well. Going back to planning for the future, that kind of relates to our personnel requests. We're limited to one utility project coordinator in the department to manage all these projects. So we're requesting a utility project manager to help facilitate that, as well as a utility accounting manager. We have $35 to $45 million in operating costs and $10 to $20 million in capital costs annually. So we're really requesting these positions to help manage that better. In regards to the capital projects, we talked earlier, we're requesting $13 million. Just over $13 million. That's really to finish up existing projects that we already have moving. In addition to that, $2 million of that is to identify the priorities and start the design process in this next year after those studies come back. So we're ahead of the game, so we're ready to go under construction with some of these projects leading into the next year if we don't get behind.
What's the pass-through cost? You said 8%?
It's 8% on sewer only.
So we're basically raising it by 2%?
Yes.
Okay, and then what about water? What was it?
Water, there's no pass-through for water, so we're raising water 6%.
6%.
And we do believe these will be a drop in the bucket compared to what the rate study will bring back.
Gotcha.
To help me understand the $2.47, is that an estimation of what you anticipate the water?
So you have a base charge for both water and sewer. So the existing base charge is somewhere around $9.50. It's $200, and so it's going to go to $12, and the sewer is going to $10 from $8.50.
And so all of that, when you talked about $13 million, that $13 million is coming from the enterprise fund solely, not all of that. That's how you're raising that? Is from the rate
Correct.
increase
Yeah,
and from the capital
anything in
increase?
this is coming from the enterprise fund.
Right.
That is
Gotcha.
tax funded.
As we look at water and sewer for the future, and I'm not talking about the 26-27 budget year, I'm talking about 27-28 forward, we're surrounded by 7 counties. Is there any benefit to us looking at partnering with any or all of those counties for our water and sewer needs?
I think that, obviously, a lot of the things that we deal with from the county perspective are regional challenges, whether that be housing inventory. We're doing a regional study for housing inventory, transportation issues, affordability issues. I think in terms of utilities, each of us are trying to figure out how we fund this ourselves. Someday down the road, yes, regional utilities make sense. There's pros and cons, obviously, but we're nowhere close to our neighbors over here, right? There's no clear connection to our neighbors in Cherokee right now, right? It's a long ways. And so I don't think this area is right for that yet, but in future generations, is there a multi-county regional system? Maybe. Is this not something we can look at? Sure, but I don't think in terms of talking to Chester and talking to Cherokee, Gaston, Mecklenburg, everybody, I don't think there's that ability right now. But it's a regional issue, sure.
I will add that they did do a regional look. I don't know what happened to that study. There is a study out there
Yeah.
Yeah,
on it.
We can get it for you.
there was something that.
Yeah.
Can you all get your hands on
They
the
did look
study
into
so we can see it? Because there is growth
Yeah.
occurring that we didn't expect, even on the western side of York County. And all it takes is water and sewer to come into the area, and then you have growth.
Right, and I think part of what county council needs to consider is, yes, you're exactly right, but do you want growth on the western side of the county? I think that's one of the things too, you gotta be careful of. So I think there's areas in the county that we would want to extend utilities to in our urban service boundary, but there's also areas we would not want to.
That's
Correct.
exactly why the comprehensive plan is so critical for the community to get out, for the property owners, and for, all of the municipalities and everyone to get the urban services boundary nailed down to where that growth is intended to go. It's a big thing. It's a very boring, taxing process, but it's very, very important.
But we can't control annexation creep.
And that,
We get smaller and smaller.
Hey.
it's the municipality, I think that, that broader discussion where it comes in, especially on the growth component, is a big deal.
Hey,
So.
Eric, just question of curiosity. Like me and you was talking about those tanks the other day with the float system and the problem and not having one. Do they have a actual, when they overflow there, since they ain't already at the meter, how do they calculate? Is that lost revenue that just run out of
That was
that?
water loss, that is calculated as water loss.
Is
yes.
calculate,
Yeah, that's after it has.
are they
already gone through
metering
the
it right there at the storage
No, it's
also?
metered, we have master meters with Rock Hill where we purchase our water, so once it's already beyond that master meter, so.
So it's beyond just
anything
at the
lost in
house
System
then?
beyond
Yeah.
that meter is water loss,
Whew,
and that's.
that's a lot of water.
So for the sake of time, I value this discussion. This has been great feedback. We're going to talk, David's going to speak to the next two slides, and then the remainder slides I will go through very quickly. But I want to make sure y'all know what these slides are, and you can look at them, we can have future conversations. But I want to make sure we give time for public safety. So in terms of protecting York County, we have significant investments in this budget related to both fire, EMS, the sheriff's office, and David's going to speak to the priorities.
So I won't read this entire slide, I'll try to be brief with it. And I'll start at that fund balance. So what we've seen is a kind of a perfect blending of two issues coming together, dating back all the way to 2021 and 22 with our capital purchases. We were looking at 3 to 4 year build times. Changing and realizing that was not efficient, and we were, while we were locking in prices, we were extended delivery times. We have now moved to a different method of purchasing with stock units. And what that means is that's shorter build time, sometimes it's actually on the ground. Well, in doing so, those two windows have now collided, where we had POs that were outstanding and being carried forward for potentially 3 or 4 years. Now, current costs coming due in the year. So in 2026 and 2027, what we see is those two situations colliding, and we see a significant decrease in the fund balance because all of that capital is coming due at one time. It's good, it's a benefit directly to the first responders and the fire departments, but it's a crunch on our budget at the same time. So for that reason, and additionally with the other items that this will accomplish, we're proposing a even 1 mil increase in the rural fire millage, and that is the unincorporated fire. So that's from 6.6 to 7.6. Now, what does that accomplish? Number one, it continues the capital replacement. That's the most significant. It continues ordering trucks and the capital replacement. On top of that, it advances our level of service. So if we've discussed numerous times our hybrid staffing model, where we begin integrating county firefighters and supporting some of the fire departments by putting firefighters in there and increasing their staffing. It also supports our reorganization of county fire to be able to grow with this in the future. We've been very segmented with divisions in County Fire. Now we're actually creating some structure where we have a suppression division, operations is what we're calling it, logistics, which is largely our shop and our maintenance, and a lot of the, I think most people are surprised to learn that York County maintains all of the equipment in the county fire system, including breathing apparatus, gas monitors. Everything is actually maintained by us. And again, as another priority, increasing that direct assistance to volunteers. The state association dues, one of the impacts of 1% is included in there, and increasing the direct assistance. The really key to hone in on this is that funding allocation. So you'll see, and some of this is the combining of those two situations coming together of the equipment ordering, it's an increase of 65% direct funding to county fire departments, whether it's through equipment, vehicles, maintenance, whatever that is. That's all direct assistance to them. And then 7.4% of that is the increase to the fire service, which is really just enough for us to keep up and maintain the level of service that we're trying to offer. So we are really trying to directly invest back into fire departments through the staffing, helping them accomplish either keeping or increasing their level of service. Any questions on that before we move?
I have a lot of questions, but
I'm sure you do.
I'll follow up after.
And we have time to talk through all these things in the coming months.
I understand. Backing up to a generalized public safety, I'm not going to go through the capital costs because we've already discussed most of those. There are some design costs built in as we talk about part of what the county manager mentioned, our $214 million is also beginning those design costs so that we can accurately scope and budget projects from the beginning. And we don't have these continual cost increase as projects expand or contract based off of what we need at any given time. So that's significant. The Motorola piece, I just did some quick math for your information, and there is a roughly $2.5 million increase in public safety communications budget. Portion of that, about 1.5, is related to the Motorola contract, but then the other portion are services that we brought in-house. Now, the question becomes, well, if our cost is increasing that much, why didn't we just continue with our Motorola contract? Because that would have been $3+ million a year. So we really recognize at least about $500,000 worth of savings annually by bringing these services in-house. So with that, on the personnel side, I'll just work backwards. So now that we're bringing some of those in-house, we will create a manager position. That's a reclassification in PSC. The Sheriff's Office has requested 3 new positions, so that's in the patrol and the Special Victims Unit, focusing on sex crimes. And then 13 reclassifications. They have several reclassifications to LPNs so that they can offer the medical services in-house, particularly like medication distribution, versus the detention center officers doing it. They'll actually have certified LPNs doing that. So that's an actual migration to bring that in-house and reduce some of their contractual costs in the long run. The fire service already mentioned, this is the reclassification to support the reorganization, and then the support staff for what we're offering in the hybrid staffing model. And then finally, as council's working through currently our EMS franchise ordinance, in order to properly execute our franchise ordinance, we need an EMS director actually focused on living and breathing EMS every single day, as the county manager has said before. So that's very integral to make sure that we have accountability and oversight over our EMS system, and not just passively managing a contract to see if it's, is it meeting our expectations. So active engagement with that. So try to be brief, but again, happy to have any conversations offline about this or anything that's pertinent for the group right now.
I know you just mentioned offline. Chairwoman Cox just mentioned having questions offline. Is there a way y'all can, if y'all have some, or for any of us, if y'all ask some, good questions or something, can y'all share?
Yep.
I would just like to know what y'all are asking, what y'all are having concerns about, or what you're excited about, because I just don't. It's just for my own personal knowledge. So if you're going to,
I don't have any problem sharing my question. The only problem is sometimes I need to understand it
Right,
to know what question to ask. And I think more importantly, this is something we're going to discuss again, right, at the next workshop,
Right.
which is coming up.
Yeah, and what we try to do last year, and I'm committed to doing it again this year, got a slide about this. Anytime y'all ask us a question as an individual, what we'll try to do, kind of like the follow-up reports, package them all, so you see the question and then the response, and we just send it out to everybody.
I just want to reiterate
Yeah.
that, just because I'm curious and I really like to listen to all the questions.
Yeah.
And answers.
Those upgrades too, David, will Motorola do its part before the county starts doing what we decided in JPS for the towers?
Yes, so
Air
it-
all?
Yeah, it's in conjunction. So they'll do whatever is under their contract through the end of June, and then we will pick up in July. A lot of the things like you were mentioning, the HVAC and generators, are not due as part of their current contract. They would have been as part of the next 7-year contract, but they would have been exponentially more expensive.
Right. Yeah, I remember us talking about that.
Yeah.
So the next few slides I'm going to go through quickly, and then y'all can look at, and we can talk more at length. But these are specific to some of the priorities you mentioned, so I wanted to make sure to include some follow-up information. We've talked about the ED-related studies. There is no general fund transfer to fund economic development this year. So last year, that transfer was reduced as part of the budget to about $87,000. This year, the ED fund is supporting itself, so we were not able to adjust that at all. We're working on a couple big initiatives this next year, and I know the ED committee obviously is aware of these, but we're focused on small business, but also updating the incentive policy. Another thing is office space needs. I just wanted to bring that up. I know the library board is very interested in that space, and likely will be asking for it in the near term. We need to start thinking about options we have as a manager's office, and we've worked with ED, and we're open to any ideas y'all have, but I think it's something we need to consider. What I think is important for everyone to realize is we have no funding for rent in this budget, right? So it's going to be hard to leave and then have to go pay rent somewhere. I think it's very important to also think about location. Obviously, there's short-term ways we can account for this, but I think that it's important to also dream long-term about what's best for ED as well, right? So I just wanted to put that out there as a consideration as part of this.
Excuse me, that's what I wanted to comment on earlier, and since we're at this point, I'll be brief and say this. I almost think it makes sense to allow the economic development director and his staff to work on an initiative for the 27-28 budget year. Start working on that now, because it's going to take time, and I think there's some opportunity for us to collaborate with other entities that need space as well. And it could be a real win-win for the county.
I think the more we collaborate with others and find a great location that we can share with somebody, I think that
So
would
if
be
council
ideal
doesn't
too.
object, I'd love to see Mitch have the opportunity to start working on that over the
Yeah,
next year.
I think this is going to be a back and forth with the library board and us, and I think we've got,
Past that, I'm thinking about where he's gonna land ultimately.
yeah,
That's what I'm talking
I
about.
hear you.
That, all this is gonna happen. I'm talking
Yeah.
about long range.
Yeah, I think, in terms of, because the way I look at this is, we need more space for our libraries. That's a definite need. And the current space that ED is in is not necessarily ideal for them either. So I think that there is the opportunity to give space for the libraries. I also have begun to learn more and more about their needs. I think the study will be important, but even if they build another library in Fort Mill, they're still going to need the library that's in Baxter Village. And so when I learned that, that kind of changed my whole perspective on this. And so I think what I'm trying to do is balance everybody's needs. But yes, obviously, the economic development team is very important to me, and I want to make sure they have the right space too. So I hear you.
There are also some things that you have to juggle, because some of the entities, obviously, some of the natural working relationships that would be with the Visitors Bureau, their lease doesn't expire for a number of years, and so we do have a short term. I am fully supportive, and I'll go on record saying I do think that we need to be looking at short-term places for ED to go, and maybe having greater collaboration with the county manager's office in the short term would be beneficial because of some of the things that the community has asked as well, for there to be more transparency in that and a little bit more collaboration. So I think in the short term, we're talking about kind of allowing Baxter finding a different place, you know, in the existing space that we have currently. And I know that, you know, there have been folks that have approached council and county manager about that already. I expect that we'll hear the library board come out and reiterate that.
Yeah.
And how do we balance that and still plan for the future?
But, right. I mean, and to that point, I mean, they're location centric, right? So they need it in a specific area as opposed to.
Long-term.
Long-term,
Right.
right, as opposed to ED where we have a little bit more flexibility, I think, from the location wise. But, you know, plus there's a referendum component to that whole piece too. You know, which is, there's that time frame that.
Yeah, I just want to put that out there. This is a work in progress. It's something we need to address. All right, partnership with Parks is something y'all brought up in your retreat. Parks is actively working on creating a foundation. I know that there's a potential, we need to get an HEP meeting on the calendar, provide updates. But there's also other potential partnerships that we're exploring. We did want to highlight the Parks positions that are in the budget as well. So that's what we're doing on this slide. Anything to add, Tom?
Nothing more than to say that the recreation funding we provided to through the IGAs with York, Clover, and the smaller municipalities are all very grateful, and it's been a good cooperative effort, and I think they're pleased with the arrangement.
One of the things y'all had prioritized was legal support on your priorities. So, you know, again, the mid-year positions you added recently, those will have a full fiscal year in the budget. But in terms of your priority, how you listed, I think that those were the things you were focused on. Y'all brought up council communication at the retreat. I don't think we have to delve into this, but I do want to kind of remind you, I think that there's a future conversation for council to talk about committee communications, because a lot of the feedback had to do with how committees share information with each other. And I'm willing to help with that and open to any ideas y'all have. One of the things we've worked on is a form, and this is very draft, and we'll share this at a later date, but a form for any council member who wants to make an assignment to a committee, a suggestion for assignment to fill out. That's one way I thought maybe y'all could share information better before the person makes the request at a council meeting. They fill out a form, everybody gets it, contest, you know, and then that form, after the chair reviews it and I review it, that can be, you know, a point in time of here's what we were trying to do, and staff can clearly understand what the assignment is too. I think that's one thing on the front end that would help. But in terms of committee communications, I'd have to ask y'all, and I think that's a future conversation for y'all. On the budget communications, kind of what you were referring to, Councilmember Litton, I want to make sure when y'all ask questions or reach out to me and my team that we're sharing that information with everybody. So we'll try to do at least a weekly follow-up report, if not more every 2 days. It depends on how many questions we're getting. But we'll really work hard. And the more y'all share those questions on the lead up to the workshop, we can come to the workshop and share the information at the workshop too. So that's one way we could do it too. Additional budget information. So we wanted to provide a slide that kind of delves into the millage information. We've shared that on the previous slides verbally and on the slides, but here's a slide that shows it for y'all to look at. Any questions here before we move on?
You're proposing a general fund increase of 0.6?
No.
I'm looking at capital maintenance.
Capital maintenance.
So capital maintenance is 1422. That's a capital maintenance fund that has its own ordinance, and there's the ability, and it goes up and down based on current year projects. So it fluctuates up and down every year.
But is it capital maintenance countywide?
Yes.
So it is a countywide tax increase?
Yeah. Okay. For capital maintenance, but that's something that there's a specific ordinance to, and something that county council created to go up and down based on current year projects. So there will be fluctuation in that. I don't know if we have the historical 5-year of what that's been, but we can definitely share that with council as we progress.
Yeah, I'm gonna have some questions about that.
Yeah, it's a function of the
The
current.
value of the mill and why we would need to do that this year.
Yeah, so it's interesting, and some projects that would typically be in capital maintenance, like the HVAC for the courthouse, we've moved to 1420 to pay for it because I would tell you what that millage rate would have been if the HVAC system was in there would be even higher. So we've tried to bring that millage rate down as much as we can, but based on the current projects that have to get done, that's the amount that needs to be in there.
But don't we have a reserve that's in excess of the amount that's
So
actually going to be used this
capital
next year?
maintenance is for current facilities, so it's like roofs and repair and HVACs, which we've done a lot of HVACs recently. The general capital fund is for typically new buildings or new things. And that's the 1420 with the fund balance. And as you saw in my 1420, that $38 million, we are leaning into that fund balance and that fund to really start moving in some of these projects. We're also, for the sheriff to for the current year budget, we lowered the transfer to the capital fund from the sheriff's office from 2 mils to 1.75, which is $575,000. So you got to remember on the value of the mill, it's spread across different general fund groups, the sheriff's office, us, and the solicitor, amongst others. And so, yes, there was a number of things in the sheriff's office, and we wanted to make sure to afford those. So we reduced the millage rate for that transfer to make sure the sheriff had what he needed. This is just another way to look at new personnel. Y'all can look at that later. We can talk about it at a later date. In terms of legislative updates, we wanted to provide an overview of where we're at with the different bills that the manager's office has been working hard on. I don't know how much time y'all want to spend on this because it's 7:30, but we've outlined, the different bills. The first one is a capital project sales tax, and we wanted to make sure, as this got developed, that it didn't impact pennies in the future. So this is something that we've worked very hard on because pennies have been such a successful program. In terms of the auditor treasurer qualifications, we're one of 2 counties that's council manager system, which means we appoint the auditor and treasurer. Others are elected. So there was a lot of language in that bill that we were concerned about because it was written for the elected positions. And so we've worked closely with our delegation to make sure everybody's aware of that and to try to encourage them to account for our differences. Something as simple as where the person lives. If you're taking applications, what does it mean if they're not currently a York County resident, right? They might move to your county someday, but if they're not currently, what does that mean? So we've worked through that.
Oh, back up just real quick. I see a star beside the very last sentence, says contact SC reps. Is that an item for us to do, or is that something y'all are doing?
Well, so we're doing it, but
Okay.
we may ask you to also support us in contacting our because currently that bill is moved to the House. So we're going to work with them, but we may ask you to contact them as well to make sure that they include that exemption for the appointed auditors and treasurers.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure whether it was an action item for us or not.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we'll let you know. We've been having conversations about both of these with our delegation, and we've got a great relationship with them, and we appreciate it. I know a number of y'all have mentioned DOT reform. This one has had a lot of changes and back and forth. We mentioned this earlier in the night, but right now it is a voluntary transfer. I'm willing to send our delegation a letter this week letting them know that we're not interested in any more roads, taking on any more roads. I think that's where y'all are at. I've communicated that verbally and in conversations. It sounds like most of my peers, at least in our neighboring counties, are doing the same, to the point where this whole idea of a voluntary transfer, why are we really even talking about this bill at this point if nobody's going to be willing to take it on? One of my big concerns is that the way they're incentivizing this would mean that you would have to take over all the roads that they're asking you to, and the municipalities in your county would also have to do that. And so with 9 municipalities, obviously a lot of roads in the county. Would we ever be in the position where we would all agree on that? I really don't think so. And so how would we pay for this? You know, if they're not willing to bring roads up to a certain level before they hand them off, that's another reason we wouldn't do it. I'm not quite sure this bill goes through. We'll see, but we've been in conversation and we'll continue to be, but, you know, I'm happy to send a very clear message in a letter as well. I know y'all have mentioned that, but I've definitely communicated that verbally, and it seems like they're hearing that from all of my peers too.
Is there a push for this because we think the BASIC Act may pass and it may push more down the state, which state's pushing more down on us and municipalities?
So a push from the state, why is the state
Federal-
pushing this?
Do we think the federal government, the BASICS Act that we talked about at RFATS, do you think them pushing roads down the states is what's causing the states just to go ahead and think
Sure.
about pushing roads down? on
I think
It's a
counties?
piece of it.
Yeah.
it could, yeah.
So, but if we're not gonna get any of the revenue that the state's receiving for roads, because they need it for all these other things that they're working on, so they can't afford these things, then it's really hard for us to justify doing this. But yeah, in general, across many different things, you see feds handing stuff down to the state and the state handing stuff down to local governments.
But I think this has been a looming issue beyond what you're talking about. I think this has been progressively developing beyond that as well.
One of our primary concerns with this is, you know, they've got language in the bill related to the makeup of the CTC. That's kind of changed as it's gone back and forth between the House and the Senate portion of this. We're continuing to monitor this and try to understand what that would mean for York County, as we are one of the few counties where county council is the CTC. So we're continuing to work on that as well. Any questions on this?
I just wonder if they're trying to cut out a lot of their employees and maintenance in all the departments across the state.
Yeah,
Here's one thing on the next slide about toll roads.
okay. And for this, you know, I think we all know that our amount of C funds and how much, most of that in the next 2 years and 3 years is going to state interchanges as well. So there's not a lot of C fund money out there for other roads as well. But yes, to your point, I don't know if the DOT knows how many roads they're going to be asking for counties to take over. And so, yeah, there's really no way for them to probably answer that question.
Seems like a lot of unknowns at this point.
It is.
And I do think I know that we've been sharing with our delegation, if the state doesn't have enough money to take care of its own roads, I don't know that sending them to the county is not gonna make that any easier. And it's simply, just gonna,
We think we got
Bigger-
people fussing
bigger
now, they really gonna be fussing that.
It's just the road.
Got no money.
And they're
The
playing
burden.
the same game we talked about earlier in here.
pushing a burden.
Taking it on to somebody else makes them look good, but the residents still get screwed over either way. So they just need to bite the bullet, do the hard work that they're elected to do, and get on with it.
Don't we have a big surplus in Columbia with a boatload of money somewhere?
Yeah, it's going to Scout.
And the last thing in this bill we wanted to highlight was the toll roads option. So, you know, the toll roads are important to us, obviously, with I-77. So we wanted to make sure y'all knew that was a part of this too. Okay. We wanted to provide a quick revenue update. This shows kind of where we're at with watercraft, heavy-duty trucks, and homestead exemptions. So there is, obviously, watercraft is happening. So that top right box, over the next 3 years, will be the impact for the entire county. We wanted to boil down the impact to York County's budget. So this is, when we talk about some of these revenues, the hard part is that, you know, you gotta remember, when we send out a tax bill, who's that,
Our name's on it.
the schools are getting most of the money, right? And so this watercraft bill will impact the schools the most. So one of the reasons to roll this out over 3 years is to kind of lessen that impact so that people can prepare for it. So you can see in 3 years, it'll be 2.2 million. But a big portion of that is going to be the school districts as they have the highest millage rates.
Those pink boxes are only watercraft
Right.
analysis.
Yeah, because heavy-duty trucks at this point, we're not seeing any movement on. That was the biggest impact for us Now, you never know if something's gonna come up. It's pretty much too late in the session for this to happen. It could come up next year. We'll continue to talk with the delegation on that. Homestead exemption has also not moved, which has been surprising.
We thought that one was gonna move quickly and it stalled, so.
But the homestead exemption wouldn't impact us tremendously because they provide the supplement.
The reimbursement comes,
But it
right.
would create that one creates a cash flow for your smaller funds. So like your special tax funds, it creates a cash flow issue because the reimbursement comes later.
But the reimbursement is typically in full.
Yes,
But are we guaranteed that reimbursement long-term?
yes.
No, I don't think so.
Is it is it statutorily
statutory.
guaranteed?
It is.
It is today, but that doesn't stop.
Yeah, not to say it wouldn't be in the
The
future, but it is
legislators next year-
statutory today.
Doing it.
So we've been working hard on all three of these. I'm thankful for our auditor, as he's been very plugged into this as well, Ryan, and he's provided this analysis. You can see the revenue loss for the county is going to probably be about a little over 100,000. Again, this is kind of hard to project. We don't
Right,
know if there's going to be a positive impact to this or not, but what we're planning for is a loss of $104,000. So obviously, that's something we could account for this year. And I think we'll be able to, obviously, as the years go on, but it is something that we need to keep our eye on, especially if it involves heavy-duty trucks.
The airport commission met just recently, they're recently releasing data on the tax revenue, and I brought this up when this came up. In York County, if your plane is not here on January 1st, I believe it is, you fly out on 12/31, you don't pay taxes in the county. The plane's not physically here, you do not pay taxes here. I think, and I know there's some state issues the committee I sit on with South Carolina Association of Counties, we've talked about this, but I think we need to take a hard look at this, because not that we're looking to create tax revenue, but if your plane sits here 11 and a half months out of the year, you should probably be paying some taxes, whether it's a pickup tax on a monthly basis, or however you want to do it, but we need to look into it and address
So
that.
where would they pay taxes at? At the register somewhere.
They go to Delaware or somewhere else, they won't, not really it's where your plane is sitting.
And I know our,
Not like a registration.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
and I know our auditor works very hard on that too, and collaborates with neighbor counties, and we're willing to dive into that in the future too, deeper
So
conversation.
we ought to get ahead of that one, I think is what I'm saying.
This chart is just an analysis over the previous years, the growth we're seeing in general fund revenues. I wanted y'all to have that at your fingertips. The accommodations tax, I want to thank staff. We've gotten this done earlier in the process. One of the things that Trish and her team and finance as well has realized in past budget years, and from y'all's feedback, is that this accommodations tax recommendation came at
Yeah.
the second or third reading, right?
Yeah.
Third reading.
Thank you for
And-
doing
and-
this.
And so we
Yeah.
wanted y'all to see what the committee recommended. You have that now. We're able to fund it. And so I think that everybody received what they request in terms of the accommodations tax. The other thing that y'all wanted to see early, and so this is the second agenda item this evening, Madam Chair, if you want to move forward to it real quick, this will be quick. But before I do delve into agency funding, because it's the second agenda item tonight, I wanted to make sure there weren't any other questions about all the previous slides we just ran through, sorry.
I expect the council will have a lot more questions, but, because this is basically
Yeah.
budget items, but.
Okay, so the second agenda item is gonna be very brief, but what I wanted to do was to share with y'all, again, this is earlier than we've done it before. We're trying to listen to y'all and provide what you're asking for. So Trish and Finance also worked on pulling together this spreadsheet for y'all. The top of the spreadsheet, we printed it for you because it is very hard to see on the screen. I apologize. We figured it'd be hard to see, so we printed it for you. It's in front of you. The top part of the chart includes agency requests. That includes the airport. The bottom, we took out the airport. The reason we did that was you can see that the airport doubled this year.
Yeah.
So that's another budget impact. The original request we got from the airport was 800 some odd thousand. And so this number has gotten better. It was in the 800s, it's come down to 600. There's an ordinance that we basically signed, an IGA, it's an IGA
Yes.
with the airport and Rock Hill, that's pretty old, that says we'll split these capital costs. And we've done it all along. I see no reason to do it, not to do it this year. They're doing significant construction at the airport. They have significant amount of grants that are coming in to pay for that, but there is a portion that we need to pay for.
Does that bring us any revenue though? I mean, we just talked about the airplanes all
Yeah.
fly away and we don't make no money on them.
Yeah,
Well, we can talk more about that. We do get some revenue.
There goes your money.
Yeah, I know, so.
Just kept flowing out.
I would
They
say
make
that-
it look nicer if we don't
Yeah.
get money off of it.
There's some tangential benefits to having it too in terms of economic development. But yeah, we can talk more about that. But what I wanted, apart from that, I wanted to show, I wanted to take the airport out of that because it does fluctuate and show.
Why what am I not seeing here? You're saying that they're asking for 600. Why am I? Tell me
Yeah,
why
you gotta
I'm
go over
not
to
seeing it.
FY '27 recommended. It
Yeah,
says
recommended.
$593,860.
Oh, it's not,
Yeah,
it's
it's
not the
all-
highlighted, okay.
Yeah, the highlighted is what.
We
is
need a
for your
magnifying
budget.
glass.
Yeah, you need it,
Exactly.
you need it,
That's
yeah.
why we printed it in a separate one.
Yeah,
'cause it's even
I just
smaller.
circled that for a second.
And we can send you this document, but
It's in your folder.
yeah. it's in
Yeah,
the folder.
you saw that.
Aren't we transitioning out of the airport, the county, and it's gonna be a Rock Hill Airport? No?
I have not been made
Okay.
aware of that. But yeah, man, that might
Can
solve
we do
it.
that?
Yeah, it might solve the problem.
The airport
Boy, you
director-
down on them airplanes.
Yeah, and he meets with us every year. And they talked about this at the, I know Councilmember Cloninger was there with me and Tom at the annual joint city-county meeting with the airport, and so he talked about this there too. I know a lot of y'all had other commitments that day. But if you look at the list in the bottom, that is the list of kind of pure agency requests we received from nonprofits, and you can see in FY '26, y'all approved 646,000. And then you see what I'm recommending in the '27, which is 621,000. And so some of these agencies, maybe one or two asked for more, but I tried to bring it down so that that number was close to what we approved in FY '26. We also received two other agency requests that are not seen in here. One was after the deadline, Pathways,
Yeah.
and another one we'd never funded before. And, my recommendation at this point, y'all, is, in terms of my perspective, we need to draw a line on what total dollar amount we're willing to contribute to agencies and nonprofits. I think, the current level of 600,000, is significant. So my recommendation would be if you're trying to add additional nonprofits to this list, potentially we think about, okay, how do you divvy up the money? You keep it at 600,000, but if you want to add two people, who are you taking it away from? Like, what's that balance? Because we've added over the years, FY '24, we had 400,000, and in FY '26, we're at 646,000. And so I do think we need to pick that number. You could add on top of this too discretionary funding, and potentially there's some back and forth between those. So I think in theory, it would be great for y'all to give us more feedback on that total dollar amount y'all are interested, and then staff can create a process where we're ranking these requests and we're designating before we bring it to you. But right now, the way we've done it is, okay, we heard from these people, this is what they requested, this is what they were receiving last year, and so we bring it for you. But
So-
I would love to get more definition
That's-
and cut it back a little bit.
That's probably a discussion that council needs to have. I will say, years ago, and I hate that Bump just left because he'll remember this, that there was a laundry list of these things, and we would entertain those requests. And this was whittled down to this small amount. I think it was millions of dollars that were being proposed. And so that was the trade-off, is that the discretionary funding was intended to address one area may have a fire department that needs something, or the fire and dive team needs this, and it wasn't something that was needed countywide. So that was reduced. All of it was reduced in order to whittle this down. And so in my understanding was this is the final list that depends on it. I think pulling funding at the last minute makes it difficult for these agencies that are doing the work of the communities. But, I mean, if you're asking council to weigh in on that, I guess the more appropriate time to do that would be at one of the next budget workshops. But one of the reasons why that discretionary funding, it all was pulled back in order to rein all of this in. And I think the question was, how do you identify special needs in certain areas where some folks have more volunteer fire departments that need to have some funding, or their parking lot needs to be funded, that kind of thing, that they didn't have funding for, so. Sounds to me like you
One-time
want,
expenditure.
Well, all of that should go through the budget process. If there's a fire department, we give fire departments money, we should.
there's a lot of fire departments that don't have special tax districts and don't have the
But we still give
funding
money
piece.
to every one of them, and we can allocate money to one if it needed a parking lot. That whole discretionary fund thing, it's too wide open, and that money could be allocated to somewhere else and should be allocated into these, just like we do.
I definitely think having that
Yes.
discussion is important, and
Yeah.
probably council be prepared to have a discussion about that at the next workshop.
Yeah, and
Sounds good.
And I think the
Sounds-
620 is what's going to be in the recommended.
Mhm.
And so if we make process changes and cap it,
Mhm.
to your point, Madam Chair, I don't think we do that to the nonprofits this year,
This
next
was
year's
capped,
budget.
right?
Yeah, so what you see here is my recommended of 621,000.
Right.
So what I would say is, if, to let the nonprofits know, hey, we're gonna make some process changes next year, and if we're gonna bring in more nonprofits, you might not get exactly what you're asking for. We might cap the
We
threshold
can,
at the, so I
we
think
can
that's.
talk through it in the budget.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the
That'd be
next
good.
budget meeting. But I'm just glad we got it up front, so this
Yes,
is.
you got up
this is
front, we
very
got time to
good.
talk about it.
Can we get a write-up on what they're actually asking for? The whole discussion, because I'd like to know, for transparency wise, what they're even asking for and
Yep,
why.
we've got all that documentation, and we can pull that together for y'all.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I just want to say this, the one that got cut was Safe Passage, $25,000, otherwise we'd look at the same amount of money we were allocating last year.
Yep.
And what I struggle with this column and anybody else requesting money is, what's the reasoning behind making the allocation, period? We have no metric, we have no measurement. In my mind, my measurement's this: if this entity didn't exist, there are entities here in York County that touch these, the ones at the bottom, in particular, three at the bottom, they touch those three. They're providing a service to those three now. The federal government's cut funding for Safe Passage as an example. So they got stripped last year financially. So we're gonna take, bless you, we're gonna take a little bit more from them. But what if Safe Passage had to close their doors? Maybe somebody else would open up and fill the gap, I don't know. But maybe we might have to fill the gap. Sheriff's Department have more responsibility, so somehow, some way, we need to come up with some kind of metric, in my mind, to determine how we come up with these numbers, because this reminds me of the rec tax. There's no rhyme or reason to that number, other than they request it, but then it goes back, what are they asking for with this money? So
I was thinking the
there's-
same thing.
I think we need to spend some time making a determination on the value behind the allocation. And then ultimately, if they weren't there, what impact is it gonna have on us?
Well, I think getting the descriptions, I think that's the first step.
Yep.
But I thought about the rec tax thing too. I feel like we're just throwing money at them, making a slush fund with no accountability, no
Well, I
transparency.
think they need
no-
it. I think they need it. The question is.
Well, so did Rock Hill and everybody else that was getting the rec tax, but
I don't
guess what?
disagree, because I voted.
I know, but I'm just saying,
So, I'm with
a
you.
lot of people need money. Why is it these seven? These seven were chosen,
I agree.
whatever you said, several years ago or for whatever reason.
I agree.
Why are we sticking with them? What about somebody else? Somebody else may be needing it way more than these two.
All right, so y'all have that information. We'll get all the details in a follow-up report to y'all. You'll have that, and then we can talk more about it as we go. That's all we had
Okay.
for our
Definitely
agenda
get
items.
more.
We do have
The road.
an executive session, couple
Yeah.
of executive session
All right,
matters.
so two executive, personal matter, contractual matter, into a county manager or attorney, receipt of legal advice. I consider settlement of project number 17228-003, track 97.
Do we have a second?
Do you have a second?
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
No, ma'am.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nope.
We will go into executive session.
Had somebody call me. Literally.
We're good? We are out of executive session. No action was taken. Do we have a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
All right.